So first of all, I just want to welcome everybody for joining us today. We are in my workshop here, and a little bit about myself. My name is Tim. I started with Tropic back in August. Prior to that, I was working in the HVAC industry since I graduated out of high school. So about 26 years. I was working for the family business. We did everything from ice machines, walk-in coolers, walk-in cooler installs, freezers, coolers, all that fun restaurant equipment stuff that we all get to work on. We did light commercial, residential. We did install a lot of mini split systems. Personally, I probably installed probably a few hundred of these, along with my guys, of these Cooper Hunter systems since they made it over to the States. So I'm pretty well versed in how they operate and how to install them. And I've made a lot of mistakes, of course, along the way. And I think a lot of times that's kind of how we learn. Unfortunately, I wish I was be able to be with you guys hands-on. We can get our hands, dirty and work on all this equipment together. But, right now, this is what we got. And we're making the best use of it because this is something that I believe you'll be able to, we'll be able to watch again at a later date. So what I'm going to be talking about today is I'm going to be going over a Cooper Hunter. It's an 18,000 BTU multi-zone Sophia system. It has a four-way cassette and a high wall system. I'm going to be going over installation techniques or tips or troubleshooting. And one thing that I wanted to point out that when I was talking with Cooper Hunter prior to this webinar, they had a couple things they wanted me to let you guys know. And forgive me for the lag. We did do a couple test runs and it seemed a lot smoother, but this morning it seems to have a little lag. So I'll try to move a little slower so that way it doesn't lag as much. So if you guys are attending this webinar and we have a follow-up webinar, which I highly suggest you sign up for the second webinar in this series, because I'm actually going to be disassembling these systems and we're going to be cleaning the coil. We're going to be pulling the blower wheels out. And I'm going to go over how to do a proper maintenance on these systems, as well as we're going to go over some indoor air quality options. With the whole COVID, we have Tropic Supply sells a good the iWave system that really works well, especially with COVID. So we'll go over that, and we'll go over how to install it and where to install those items. So, but if you attend this webinar or next webinar, Cooper Hunter, they're going to give you guys a certificate. We'll go ahead and be filling that out. We'll put your name on it and we'll email it to you guys. So that's good to add to a resume or just to have. Also, Cooper Hunter, we offer these are technical support cards. I'm going to try to get close so you guys can see it. Let's see there. So these are technical support cards. You can basically scan that barcode. It's going to take you to their YouTube page, and it has a lot of troubleshooting videos to help you guys in the field if you can't get a hold of me or Cooper Hunter. So that's a good tool to have in your back pocket. And Cooper Hunter has always been, as a contractor working with Cooper Hunter before I started working with Tropic, they're very, the contractor manufacturer relationship is very important to them. So their tech support is unlike others, it's a live tech support. So that being said, if you have a Cooper Hunter question, say if you can't get a hold of me, they encourage us to point you guys towards them. If you can't get a hold of me, by all means, call the manufacturer, call Cooper Hunter directly. Unlike a lot of manufacturers, they welcome that communication. But also, it's not a ticket system. So if you're having trouble, or if you're going to a job site where the customer's already give you an error code and you want to have tech support, right there when you get there, it's best to call them when you're almost at the job site or call them when you're there, because you're not going to get a ticket and have to wait, till later or a couple of days for a callback.
Hey, Tim, I got a quick question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How do contractors get the technical support cards? Do they come with each unit, or is it something they can pick up?
They're at all our distributors. When you pick up a Cooper Hunter system, they're on the counters. And I know a lot of we have branches that don't allow you inside, but if you ask the counter guys to grab you a card, they're typically on the counter, so they can bring that out for you. Okay. And also going back to Cooper Hunter, I wanted to mention um, all their information and submittals. If you're doing a job, you need submittals. If you want to go, you don't know what the error codes are, or you need installation manual. Um, all that information is on their website, cooperandhunter.us/support. When you go on there, you'll see a little icon, click support, and that'll take you to a list of all the different systems and model numbers. And you click on there, you can get your submittals, you can get your installation manuals. There's error code information on there as well. So that's going to be a good tool for you guys, especially when you're designing a system, or if you're doing permitting or you're working with engineers, you'll be able to get that information off their website directly instead of trying to have to print out something or get your sales consultant to print something out for you. You'll be able to get that yourself. Also, before I start, Cooper Hunter, I'm just going to go over this briefly, but Cooper Hunter has a project reference book, and they're going to be coming out with a new one soon. And the reason why I'm pointing this out to you guys is all these pictures are from contractors like yourself. And they are going to be coming out with a new project reference book, and they're looking for more pictures and submittals. So if you check out their Facebook and their other social media, the YouTube, if you submit those pictures to them, and your picture is chosen to be in the next reference book, they're actually going to give you guys $50. So a $50 gift certificate for contributing to their next reference book. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that they're doing that for you guys. Let me see here before I get started. No, that's about it. If I think so. I may miss a couple things along the way, but hopefully I can hit on everything, and hopefully I only keep you guys here for about an hour. At least that's the plan. So without anything else to say, installation and troubleshooting. So when I think of installation and troubleshooting, I kind of see them as they go hand in hand. So if you have a good installation and you have the right tools for a good installation, it's going to avoid a lot of your troubleshooting. My experience with mini split systems in general, when I go back or I'm called back on somebody else, when I was called back on somebody else's install because it stopped working and they couldn't get a hold of the installing contractor, or which you're going to get a lot of contractors don't want to touch mini split systems. So if you start marketing yourself as working on these mini split systems, it's going to open the door for more business, because there are a lot of people out there that will install them and then they're gone. So when I would go back, 90% of the time it was installation mistakes, right? They didn't take their time, they didn't use the right tools, they just got in, did the install, and got out. And for you guys, I want to encourage you to take a little extra time and do it right, because you're going to have to go back on your own dime, most likely, and it's just, you're wasting time, you're wasting money. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to go over, I always thought was common knowledge, but I found, after training installers that work for the family business and working with other technicians that I had hired, that, and then even after I trained them going back on some jobs, I realized a lot of stuff, unfortunately, is not common knowledge. So bear with me if you've heard all this before. Just stick with me through it. Hopefully, I'll be able to tell you something you haven't heard before. So first thing I want to talk about is a good core drill. If you're installing more than one or two of these high walls a month, a core drill is going to be a worthwhile investment for you. It's just going to make the job cleaner. It's going to make the job go faster, and it's going to help you save time and money, because like we all know, time is money. We had a Hilti, and we used that when I first started. We would rent it, and then once we purchased it, it just made life so much easier. But I always use a 3-inch core drill bit, and anytime I tell somebody when they're doing the high wall system and they're going to be drilling, I always recommend drilling your pilot hole from the inside out. And you always want to go, the inside hole should be higher than the outside hole. That's going to allow for proper drainage. So you want that downward slope coming out of the unit. I've been on jobs where people have water leaks because somebody else installed it. And believe it or not, like I said, you would think it's common knowledge, you know, water flows downhill. So you want to go to downward slope, but they weren't. The drain line was up and over the copper, and it created a trap, and the system was just running down the water, or the water was just running down the wall. The drain line is already small on these. So, and you don't need a trap with any of these systems. You don't need to trap the drain line. So that being said, drilling from the inside out, a pilot hole, and then do your core drill from the outside in. What that's going to do is that's going to cut down dust for the homeowner, or if you're in an office, in a garage, and you have cars in the garage. It's going to make your cleanup a lot less, and it's going to make the customer a lot happier. Another tip that I used to have my installers do is they would actually have a little misting bottle of water, and as they would drill, they would hit it with some water. Now we can cut down on the dust as well. Because when I first started having my installers do them, they were drilling from the inside out, and I was getting that call from that homeowner saying there's dust over everything. My wife she's livid, and so you want to avoid that phone call, right? You want to come in there, you want to be the hero of the day, you want to put the system in, and you want it to work flawless. You want the customer to be happy, and just little things like this are going to help you avoid troubleshooting and avoid unnecessary headaches. We also have the Mighty Bracket system. Oh, by the way, also everything there, aside from the core drill, everything is available at Tropic Supply. If you have a question on pricing, just contact your sales consultant, and they'll be able to help you out with pricing and availability. But so we have a Mighty Bracket. The Mighty
Tim,
Bracket.
we have a quick question.
Oh.
With the core drill, what happens if you have rebar in the way? They're asking.
Okay. So when we would have rebar, what I would do is, this is what I recommend. One, I recommend trying to stay away from the headers and the windows as much as possible, because that's where the rebar is going to be. If you hit rebar, what we did is we would drill as far as we could from one side. Then with that pilot hole, since you have the pilot hole on the other side, you know where you're at. Drill from the other side in, and try to get as much concrete out of both sides of that rebar as you can. And from then on, your chisel hammer is going to be your friend. And what we would do, because typically the rebar, you can get to both sides of it. So you're really only knocking about an inch of solid concrete, or maybe 2 inches. And then once you clear that rebar, get in it with their sawzall. You know, if you hit rebar, so that's another thing, right? So this is one of the bits that my guys used. When they hit rebar, they didn't stop. They just kept going and going and going. And these won't drill through rebar. So you can imagine my frustration going out there and buying another bit. So if you hit rebar, or if you're going against the wall and you'll know if it's moving. You can watch the depth of the cup as you're going in. And once you get to about 75% depth of the cup, you always pull it out, empty out the concrete that's in there, and start back again. But you'll know if you're not moving and you're not creating a lot of dust and you're not moving, that cord is not going into the wall. You better pull out and you better look, and you'll see a little black line, and you know you hit rebar. And in that case, you go to the other side, drill the back side of it, and then those are jobs that aren't the most fun, right? When you hit rebar, it's like, okay, we're going to be here for a while. That's what could take 10 minutes is now going to take you an hour and a half. But doing that, drilling from both sides, and having a good chiseling hammer, like what I have a Bosch here, so that's a multifunction. So I can take this core drill off, and then I can put a chisel on it, and I can hammer it out, and then I can go with the saws on and cut the rebar. So other than that,
one more question. How many bits come with the drill?
The bits, you have to buy them separate. So with any, just like any other drill, I had a Hilti. I recommend looking online, because that Hilti brand new was like, I want to say it was like $1,700. I was able to pick it up for, I think, like $600 or $700. And the same thing with the bits. You could find good used bits on eBay. But if you try to buy that bit brand new, it's going to cost some money. But no, the bits do not come with the drill. Everything is separate, just like you buy any kind of cordless drill. You're only going to get the drill. So, but like I said, this is, unfortunately, we don't sell as a Tropic, but like if you can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or online, like I said. Anything else? Nope. Okay.
No, we're good.
All right. Okay, we're good. Okay, so back what I was saying with the Mighty Bracket. So What's good about the Mighty bracket is if you've installed a high wall system, you'll notice that the copper and drain can go out either the left or the right. I always recommend bending the copper and going out the right, especially if you're on an exterior wall, because what that's going to do is once you set that unit on the wall, all your flare connections and your drain pipe connection is all going to be on the other side of the wall. It's going to be easy to service. If you have to come back for future leaks, hopefully you don't, and you've done everything well, and you don't have that issue. But if you need to do a leak check, you'll be able to do it easier. But there are some situations where you're on an interior wall and you just can't extend that copper out. There's about 1.5 feet to 2 feet of copper that you can extend out, but you can't. So what you'll have to do is all your things will have to be behind the unit. That's where this is going to come into play. That's going to be your friend, because you're going to be able to mount that bracket. You'll be able to do all your flare connect. And I pick it up kind of and bring it closer, but it's a little big. And you'll be able to make all your connections and do your pressure testing and make sure your installs, and then put the system back on the wall. And that's where this is going to really come in handy. Other than that, honestly, I rarely had to use that, because typically, like I said, I'll right side, and that's just going to make your life a lot easier. If you're pulling, or if you're in an interior wall, or if you're in say you're putting them in a server room, and you don't have access to a gravity drain, you got to go up and above the drop ceiling. These are a couple options that we have for mini split. Let me see if I can get that in there without the glare. There we go. For mini split condensation pumps, they're installed in a couple different ways. We'll probably go over some of the installing of this in the next video. But like I said, these are going to be very important for you if you can't access a gravity drain, or you're in an interior wall and you need to get up above a drop ceiling. I don't recommend going too far with, like, if you got like 2 or 3 floors to go up to a roof with those, I don't recommend that. I would recommend getting another pump, pumping this into that pump, and having the larger pump be able to pump out further. Tools, you're going to want to get yourself, if you're doing mini splits, in all honesty, the way everything's going with the HVAC industry, probes are going to be your way to go, especially with mini splits. Mini splits, they're very sensitive to the Freon charge. So if you're a little bit off, it can cause some weird things to happen, and it may not throw an error code at you. So what's good about a probe is, say you've gone back on a system and you're attaching your gauges every time, that little length of hose over 5, 6, 10 hookups to check your pressures, you're going to lose Freon, and you're really going to have to add Freon. So these probes, this is a field piece. We offer field piece and testo. So I highly recommend these. I've had people say, well, if I put my probe on, how do I add Freon if I need to and be able to check? So what I did is I just got a little T, and I put a little T on there. So that way I can have my probe on, I can connect this to my mini split, and then if I need to add Freon, I can connect the hose here with and what I would use a little ball valve to be able to control the flow of Freon. So that's going to come in handy. So yeah, basically I would hook up this to the hose for the Freon. So if I needed to, put the Freon in, that would use that. Needle point probes. This is going to be, let me see if there we go. This is going to be very important, not just for mini splits, but also if you're working on our root inverter systems or anything with a board, you're going to want these needle point probes. So that's going to be important. Tubing bender, a good tubing bender. This tubing bender actually comes with a couple other cool things. This tubing bender kit. This is gonna, so if you're bending 3/8 and 1/4 inch, you should be able to bend that without a bender. Even 1/2 inch, you should be without a bender. But once you start getting above 1/2 inch, and you're running in line chases, or you're running out the wall and you don't want the copper, this is going to help you a lot. So you don't get kinks, and then you're not trying to squeeze out the kink. So, instead of running the copper, I've seen a lot of guys where they just take a crescent wrench and they go around the kink to try to, open it back up again. So just do yourself a favor and get a good tubing bender. There we go. This tubing bender comes with a really nice yellow jacket tubing cutter. So that came in handy. I actually use a lot of these tools to install this equipment here in the shop. Here's another item that I highly recommend, and this is going to come when you get to do your flares. This comes with that tubing bender. Now this is a deburring tool. I prefer this deburr tool versus the pencil type. What I've noticed with the pencil type is that sometimes you'll take too much out, and then the end of it will actually scar the inside of the copper. And when you do your flare, you have that groove that's in the copper, and then you get a leak. So I like this one. It's just kind of foolproof. You just hold the copper upside down. You ream out the burrs, and it works every time. So I'm a big fan of this one. We also have this is another kit. This kit has a lot of products in it, so it's almost pretty much complete for the most part. You have your Allen keys, you have your flare tool, you got your torque wrench. And it has the adapters and has some other items in here. We sell this as a complete kit, so if you're doing that, it'd be a good way to go. Comes with an all nice bag. Put everything in. Torque wrench. So this is something that, I mean, I'll be honest, when I was installing these, we didn't have one, right? But after once I started working for Tropic and I'm starting to get more into the technical side of things, and I'm starting to see a lot of things that I wish I did that would have made my life a lot easier. I was pretty good at flares, so I very rarely had a leak. But my installers, they had a lot of leaks. This would have came in handy. And actually, when I was installing this equipment in the shop, I went over and I was going back and forth what I thought was tight and what was actually. And I tend to be an over tightener. I also like to work on cars, and I'm into all kinds of other stuff. I'm someone that's going to break the bolt, right? So I'm going to over tighten. I'm always snapping stuff. So what I found is I've been over tightening, and the problem with over tightening when it comes to flares is over tightening a flare. You may not get a leak. Anytime you do your flares, I just want to mention this before I forget. Anytime you do your flares in a mini split system, and you want to pressure test them to 500 psi, the system will handle over 600 psi. So you don't have to worry about popping a hole in the coil or blowing anything up. Pressure test everything at 500 psi, and you shouldn't have any leaks. If you have a leak, that's why you want to do a 500 psi, because that's really going to test that flare joint. But going back to what I was saying before, is I would over tighten, and if you over tighten, you could crack the flare, and you may not get a leak at first because maybe that crack isn't fully hasn't gone the full way through the seal yet. But as the system runs and that slight vibration, the hot and cold cycles, that crack is gonna grow and then you're gonna go back for leak. So you want to avoid over tightening. So that was really key. I really found myself to be a big over tightener once I was checking myself the other day. A couple other things I want to point out are having a good flare tool. So I'm gonna get close to here and see if you guys can see this. Let's see here. So if you could see, there is a difference in flare surface on these two, very slight. I found an old, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've seen some debates on, you make sure you purchase a R410 flare toolkit, don't use an R22 flare toolkit. Flare toolkits that I've seen at Tropic, they all seem to have the same size of necessarily the angle, but it's the size of the seal that it's going to make, right? I dug up a flare tool that I had from like 15, 20 years ago when I first started, the old style, when you put a little oil on it and just crank this push right in. The flare sealing surface that it makes is not as wide or as broad as the newer flare tools. So if you have an old flare tool, I suggest getting rid of it, because so if you don't have enough seal on there, when you go to, especially if you're over tightener like I am, you can actually squeeze that flare out of the joint. So you're going to tighten it, and that flare is actually going to want to slip out. So you want to make sure that you have a good mounting or good seal surface with a good 410A flare tool. And with this, the JB flare tool kit, I was actually really impressed. So I cut that with a Sawzall. because I was really trying to show you guys like what a bad flare is, but it actually doesn't look too bad. I wouldn't use it, but when I got done with the flare, I was actually, wow, that's actually not too bad. But having a good flare toolkit, with the JB tool, it kind of oscillates around, so it rounds the edge of the flare and it slowly works that flare through it instead of just pushing in like the old style. If you're
Tim, we have
having,
a couple questions.
okay.
The first one is, what are your thoughts on the shark, what are they, shark bites, I think they're called?
Okay,
Let me see
yeah. I know,
okay,
I know.
my thing just went up. Shark fitting, sorry.
Yeah, well, so shark bite fittings, they're not rated for Freon. They're not. Now, Rector Seal makes, they make slip compression fittings like the shark bite that are especially for HVAC that are rated 660 PSI. So if you're in a situation where you need to, you can't braze, and before I forget, if you do braze with these systems, you really need to low flow nitrogen. They're not as forgiving as a residential AC systems. If you're not low flow nitrogen, you're asking for a headache. There is a little screen built into the coil inside the evaporators. You're going to clog that up, and I have had to go back and disassemble it and clean that screen out. But if you are in a situation, look into RectoSeal. We are looking in. I think we're looking into getting those, but we don't have them yet. But those are rated. The shark bites. Only time I use shark bites is running drain lines. I would use shark bites when I was doing walk-in freezers, because if you've worked on walk-in freezers and you got your guys soldering and then they burn up the whole panels and it's just a mess. The shark bites were, I love using it. It made running a drain line in a freezer and wrapping the heater around the drain line night and day. So that's the only time I would use those, if you're using a drain for a drain line. What's the other question?
Sorry, that's it. You're good to go.
Oh, okay. All right. So flares. Okay.
Wait, one more. Well, I'm
okay.
sorry, it just popped up. What about the flared fittings that Tropic sells?
The flare fittings. You mean the gaskets?
I'm waiting on them to respond. I'll let you keep going, and then
okay.
if it comes in, I'll ask again.
Okay. Let me get back on track here. So forgive me if I pause for a second and try to regain my thoughts. Going back to doing the flares, when you're doing the flares, I recommend using some Nylog blue, and put a little bit on the threads and a little bit of Nylog blue on the back of the flare. So you just a drop on the back of the flare. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow, you're not going to, so if you start torquing this, if you don't have a torque wrench and you start to tighten down the flares, I recommend, and as you're tightening it, once you see that copper start to move with the wrench, that's about where you want to be. If you're tightening it and that copper is just going, and you're entire, you're way beyond. Once that copper starts to move with the wrench, you want to stop. That being said, that Nylog blue is going to help keep the back of the flare joint lubricated, so that when it's not moving because the flare nut is grabbing it versus you're at the right torque, if that makes sense. But after using the torque wrench, it's a worthy investment, especially if you have installers in the field and you teach them how to use it. You grab it, you click, it's done. There's really no guesswork, and it's just going to cut down on any headaches that you have in the future. What we do sell at, and this was big. So I did a job, or I had my guys do a job. We did about 12 of these Cooper Hunter systems, and we were running copper through the attic and behind some cabinets. And it wasn't maybe 6 months, and they're like, oh, apartment one's leaking. You go back there, it's a Freon leak and a flare, and you fix that, and then, oh, apartment three's leaking. So that was kind of one of those nightmare jobs. But it really came down to the install, right? So every time we would get a flare that was leaking, I sent my guys back with these. These are going to help. These are going to be a friend. If you got issues where your guys are constantly or just have a problem with just getting a good flare and you have a habit of having leaks, or your guys have a habit of having leaks, purchase a set. They sell these in bulk packs as a 1/2 inch, but they also sell just line set specific, where you can get 2 1/2 inch and 2 1/4 inch. So that'll be good for that single zone system or each set of copper. And basically how they work is you have your flare gasket there, it's coated, and then so here's your flare. So once you get ready to set your copper, you just take this and it just clips on, and it stays on pretty well. And then you can go ahead and take your flare, line up your flare, and go ahead and tighten it down. I'm not really going to go over how to do a flare. There's plenty of videos online, but I'm just showing you some things that were headaches for me when I was in the field, and when I had guys that I had to keep sending back out over and over and over again. Another thing is that I want to point out too is when you get these systems, I know everybody's in a rush. You want to get the units and you want to get to the job site. And I don't know how many of you guys have ever got an air handler and you pull the rubber plug out of the coil and you don't hear anything, and you kind of look at each other and like, do we install it or do we check it? So I've been there several times. With these high wall systems or the cassette systems, they come with, and not too many people seem to know this, and I'm actually surprised. If you see, there's a little tiny red nipple. I'm trying to get to, there we go, that's my shirt. You see that little tiny red nipple there? That is actually letting you know that the system has pressure. So if you open one of these systems and that little red nipple, it's typically on the suction side, but I've seen them on the liquid side depending on the brand. That's going to let you know. And so what I did is I actually, let me see here, I'm trying to get it, so there we stand in front of it. So I actually pressurized, I took a little piece of tube and I pressurized it so I can show you guys. So I'm gonna let the pressure out. Now, before I could push that down, now I can push it down. It's gonna go down. See? That's letting you know that there's no pressure in this. So if you come across a mini split this and you can push it down easily like that, or it's sunken down like that, then you have a couple different options. I would recommend putting that unit back in the box and bringing it back to us and then exchange it. If you're far away, you want to go ahead and pressure test it, by all means, pressure test it. But like I said, pressure test at 500 PSI. And then just go over, maybe put a little trace R22 if you have it, and do a leak check on it and get some good bubbles. I recommend the Big Blue. What's good about the Big Blue is when you go to install your systems and you do your flares and you're pretty sure you got your flares all nice and tight, go ahead and pressurize the system up to 500 PSI. Go ahead and coat all your flare joints with a nice clear glossy layer of that Big Blue. Don't squirt it like my guys would come and they would just hammer it with that Big Blue, and they were actually throwing bubbles on top of it. You just want a nice little stream of the Big Blue on there and let it sit. I have been on jobs where you put it on there and you look, oh, no bubbles, were good. Well, that's if you don't have a big leak, but you may have just a little tiny pinhole of a leak. Let it sit for 15 minutes. Let the Big Blue do its work. There have been many times where I put the Big Blue on there and then I give it 15 minutes. I go back and you'll see a little spot of suds. And so then you know you have a leak. So you want to go ahead and address that at that point. We also offer, if you're by the beach and you're doing anything near the ocean or probably east of US 1 or really east of 95, this is a plastic line set. It comes with 90-degree bend. It comes with some couplings, comes with a line cap, and it comes with, I believe, about 10 feet or 8 feet of a plastic line set. And that's just going to make the job look a lot cleaner. So, and it's not going to rust. So it's going to look good for years and years to come. We do sell the regular 4x4 line set coverage you can cut and put together. But if you're near the beach, I'd recommend using one of these plastic line sets. Another thing that Tropic offers, our line set kits, they're a complete line set kit. It comes with a control wire, and the control wire already has the terminals on the end. So you don't really need to strip unless you want to cut the wire down and not have excess wire. But you don't need to add your own terminals. It's got terminals on both sides. And just so you know, the only reason why I say certain things, like I said, sometimes it maybe it's common sense, but I found that common sense is not so common, that this is for the high wall side. So you send terminals. This is what it's gonna help you when you get into the high wall unit to slip them in the terminals. And then these U terminals, you're gonna use that as a condenser. So that's important. The drain line that is in our kit, it's more rigid. If you look, it has a corrugation on it. And this is the standard. This is what comes with a lot of other kits. And actually this I would even say this is sort of an upgrade to a lot of the kits that I've seen. But if you look, it's just really, it bends really easy. The corrugation, this is more durable. It's just gonna flow better. Another thing that I like about our drain line versus others drain lines is this has corrugation, and there's corrugation, so you have where algae can kind of build in little pockets. Ours is smooth on the inside. It's completely smooth. So anytime you're coming to a job and you want to clean the drain line out, what I usually have my guys do is get an electrician snake and get some bottle brushes and tape a bottle brush to the end of that electrician snake, and then you can snake out the line. You can brush it nice and clean. So that's one thing that came in handy. We do also sell adapters if you want to go to 3/4 or 1/2 inch PVC. That's a lot of times that's what my guys would do, is we would just take the drain lines outside the back of the unit, and we would just take your 3/4 PVC and we would shove it in there, and then glue it or put some kind of like clear hose to hold it tight. Or a lot of times they would just take black tape and wrap black tape around it. By all means, you can use that. Just like I said before, don't trap it. You do not need to trap these systems. If you trap it, you're really just, this system, it's not a negative pressure. So it's not going to, it's not going to try to suck the water back in, right? Like a standard AC, a standard residential system. Another thing about our line set kit is sometimes you get line sets and they're like just gray covering. And then if you're doing, especially if you're on a roof or they're outside and you're pulling a permit, then you have to paint it. What's good about this line set kit is actually triple layered. So the inner layer is your insulation, and then you have an outer white layer, which is actually UV rated. And then you have an outer skin that's UV rated as well. And it's more resistant to a lot of the sun than most of the other line set kits that you're getting out there. So this is going to help, and it's UV rated, so you'll pass inspection with this. Another thing is if you have copper in the truck and you're just going to run your own line set, that's fine. What's important though is that you insulate the lines separately. I've gone on a lot of jobs where they'll take, so if you have a 1/4 and 3/8, they'll take 5/8 split insulation or solid insulation. They'll run both pipes into it. So your expansion valves are in the condensers. All these Cooper Hunter systems, all the expansion valves, they're EEVs, they're inside the condenser. So both lines are going to sweat. So you definitely want to insulate both lines, but you want to insulate them opposite each other because there's going to be temperature difference, right? You don't want to have any temperature loss because they're already so close to temperature. You put them together, you're just really creating yourself unnecessary callbacks and poor performance. Will it work? One thing about the mini split systems, I will tell you that I am surprised at some of the systems out there and that they even work. So will it work? Yeah, probably work. I highly suggest against it. So very important, insulate your copper line sets independent of each other. And when you do get the flare sets, I typically cut the flares off and reflare it myself. I know I was confident in my flares. I have got some flare line sets in the past, not this kit, but years ago when I was first buying line sets, and the flare would be all gnarled or it'd be crushed or something would be wrong with it. So always inspect your flares if you do buy a flare set kit. But if you're like me, I still cut them off and reflare them. But for the price point on these kits is great. And you get everything. You get communication wire. We have different lengths, 16 feet, 25 feet, and I think 30, I'm not sure. I think there's a 32 foot or something.
Hey, Tim.
But, yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you. It's
No.
8:45. I just wanted to give you a time check.
Okay. Yeah, I get long-winded. Let me start going through a little faster. Sorry. Okay. I'm not gonna rush. So going back to pressure testing, you want to make sure you have a good regulator on your nitro tank because you want to be able to go up to 500 psi. Good vacuum pump. and a micron gauge. Very important to have a micron gauge. We also have a scale. You definitely want to get the scale, because if you're running extended line sets, you're going to need to weigh in the Freon. And one thing I want to mention also before I forget is whenever you're doing these systems, the majority of calls that you get, I'm starting to kind of work my way into the troubleshooting aspect of this video or this webinar. Freon leaks are going to plague you guys. And they're going to be subtle. They're not going to always show up. Actually, a lot of times they're not going to show up in an error code. I get calls, and a lot of times it shows up in heating this time of year. So I'll get somebody that says, hey, I have a dual zone system. They both work great and cool, but in heating, one doesn't heat. You're low on Freon. The fan doesn't ramp up, low on Freon. One system seems to cool better than the other, you're low on Freon. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a Freon issue. So if you roll up on a call and you're not 100% sure what's going on, there's no error code, there's poor performance, it's not ramping up, obviously check to make sure the blow reel is not totally filthy, because they do get dirty. You want to go ahead and pull the Freon out and weigh it in. These systems, you really don't need to hook up gauges on these systems unless you want to make sure there's Freon in it. So pull this Freon out, weigh it, it'll tell you if the charge was off, weigh a brand new charge back in. And I can't tell you how many times I got a call and they had these weird issues, and sometimes they'll throw you codes that make no sense. Take the Freon out, unplug the system, let the system reset, pull the Freon out, weigh it back in, and there's a good chance you're going to be able to solve that issue. And if that doesn't work, then you just move on to the next step. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and install another thing I also want to mention too is that when you're running these kits, like I said, with these systems, it's almost like a critical charge. So you want to have a minimum line set length of 10 feet. You don't want to go under 10 feet, because then you could potentially be overcharged. So anytime you're installing the systems, you want a minimum line set length of 10 feet. And from then if it still seems a little too long, just kind of do one little coil behind the condenser and leave it like that. But you don't want to go less than 10 feet. Okay, so with camera, yeah. So when you're going to get your cassette, and I recommend taking the filter. This is the little filter rack. I recommend taking that off. And then there are arrows. Let me see, where is the arrow? Right here. There's an arrow here, and there's an arrow here, and then that's how you're going to line that up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. What's good about these as well is you got these hangers, there's little wire hangers here, so you can hang your cassette cover, so you don't have to try to line up the screw holes and hold the thing at the same time. Okay, so now it's going to hold this up in place. You're going to want to go ahead and plug this in to the board. Apologize for talking too much at the beginning. You really could, this really could be like an almost all day class. And maybe one day we'll be able to do that for you guys. But we may just have to come up with some more webinars and not to break things down more step by step, I guess. There is, I'm gonna take this real quick from you. Right over here, there is a spot where you could run your communication cable so it's not pinched. So you want to make sure you do that. You're going to run there's a communication wire, and this is where you're plugging into the main board. And this is going to be the controller, the wire controller that's right here. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this to you. Thank you. And you'll take this. This is your other cord right here. This is going to help. If you're using a wireless remote, your wireless remote sensor is going to be here, and there's going to be all your LEDs. Okay. You're going to plug your wired controller in here. I'm going to plug this into the board everything's labeled, everything's pretty simple, straightforward. You really can't mess it up. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's it's pretty straightforward. Have I seen people plug stuff in that you would look at it and be like, why would you even do that? Yes. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. They also have hookups here. I'm gonna take this real quick. So this, if you need for makeup air, this is gonna be your makeup air attachment. You're gonna have to have mechanical. You're gonna have to have a fan to boost the air, like a booster fan to bring the air into the system for your makeup air in a commercial application. You have your drain line port up there. There is a condensation pump built into this. The max lift is going to be about 20 inches, so you don't want to go any higher than that. Typically, I tell people to try to just go straight out of there with your PVC or your drain. And like I said, you don't need to put a trap on it either. You got your flare connections. You want to make sure that you do insulate these. As far as that, that's about it that I can think of. Also, with this controller, once I power the system up, you'll see, it has readouts on it, and even when the power is on, it's going to show a display. But the only way that, and people will call you say, hey, it's on cool, I have the temperature set down, and all the functions will be lit up, but it won't be cooling. Well, this red light needs to be on. You'd be surprised how many times I was like, well, is the red line on? They're like, no. Like, I'll press the power button on. They're like, oh, okay. So now we're gonna go down here. So we got our wire controller hooked up. We got our 4-way cassette hooked up. Now I'm gonna go through, try to do this. If I'm rushing too fast, I'm just trying to make sure you guys can get back out in the field and do what you gotta do. Testing the reactor. Testing the reactor is pretty straightforward. You can test out the plug. This is your reactor. And basically you're just gonna test it and make sure there's continuity across it. You'll get these error codes. I don't have a whole list of error codes in my head. Unfortunately, there are a lot of error codes. So that's where it comes in. That's where it's important to be able to go to the website, the cooperandhunter.us/support. You'll be able to get all this information. So you're gonna want to take your meter set on ohms. You're gonna check continuity, and you're gonna check your reactor. So you want continuity, that's telling your reactor is good. Then you also want to take it and go to ground and make sure the reactor is not grounded. Okay, that's letting you know the reactor is good. From then, you're going to want to check your compressor. These are 3-phase compressors. I recommend, just for ease of service or troubleshooting, unplug the connection. But you always want to verify, and this goes with any system. You always want to verify at the compressor. So can you see this? The reading on can you see the numbers? No. Okay, I'm going to go across. So you're going to go across each winding, and they're going to be the same. You want to get the same ohm reading. This one's going to be around 2. You see that? It's going to be around 2. So you're going to cross each terminal, and they all should be the same ohm. That's going to let you know your compressor is good. If any one of those is way out of whack, then you know your compressor's bad. Verify it at the terminals and pull the compressor. Contact Cooper and Hunter, and they'll make sure they or contact us, and we'll get you another compressor. Very important to register these units. I believe the warranty is 5-year parts, 7-year compressor, so it's very important to register these units. You want to go ahead and make sure that you do that. I would recommend doing it for the customer, because 9 times out of 10, the customer is going to forget, and then they're going to call you back and then it's almost out of warranty, and then you say you didn't register it. And that's a whole conversation that I'm sure you guys have had, that I had several times. Another thing I want to point out while I'm here is that this is a multi-zone system. Can you see this? This is a multi-zone system, and you have multiple ports. So the largest BTU capacity, the largest unit, is always going to go to the lowest port. So if this was, say, this is an 18,000 BTU system, you can oversize, you can put a larger capacity of head units onto this system. So say if there's 18,000 BTU, so say if I had a 12,000 and a 9,000 BTU a high wall and a cassette, the 12,000 BTU would go on the lowest port, and then you'd work your way up from there. If you had the 48 or the 5 zone system, you're going to want to start with the lowest port with your largest capacity system and then work your way up from there. Okay, I'm going to bring this a little closer. What I want you guys to listen for is I'm going to plug this in and see if you guys will be able to hear this. But when we start this system up, these are going to click. You're going to hear them like click, 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 and they're opening and closing. So that's always a good sign. If you're not sure if they're working, you can hold them and you'll be able to feel them pulse in your hand. So let me start it up. Not sure if you guys can hear that, but I can feel it. These are pretty quiet, but I can feel this one right now is pulsing. I'm sure you can hear. So that's going to be always on every system. If you plug a system in and you don't hear that noise, you may want to go ahead and start looking at your line voltage. Another quick thing I want to point out, and once again, excuse me if I seem like I'm rushing through. I want to make sure I get you guys where you need to go. On these systems, if you have a communication error, and you're not sure to start with the outside or the inside, if you go across 2 and 3, put your positive, switch over to DC volts, and positive on 2 and negative on 3, you're going to look for a fluctuation in voltage. Normal communication is going to fluctuate from positive to negative. If you have only positive fluctuation, then you're going to want to look at your condenser. If you're having negative fluctuation, you're going to want to look at your evaporator. That's going to at least help point you in the right direction. How are we doing on time so far?
We have about 7 minutes.
7 minutes? Okay, I want to hold that right there for me. I want to go over this really quick as well. This is important, and I'm bringing this up because, like I said, most of the stuff that I'm talking about is stuff that either I made mistakes on or my guys made a mistake on. The center of the bracket is not the center of the unit. I have been on jobs where you want to put this unit in between some cabinets, and so you just take this bracket, you're like, okay, center, you hang it on the wall, and then you go to drill your hole, When you go to put the unit on, you're too far over to one side. All the measurements where the hole are going to go are going to be, everything's going to be in the manual. Your installation manual is going to be your best friend when it comes to measurements and clearances and torque specifications. What I recommend to do is this bracket comes screwed to the back of this unit. Before you remove this panel, measure the width and mark. I did that here. I marked the center. So that way, when I went to the wall, I would I would just put an anchor on there and just leave it out. And then I would hang it on here like that, hang it on the wall like that. I would get my level. I'd do all 4 corners. You want to do all 4 corners because that's going to help create a secure mounting base. It's going to help alleviate any slight vibrations. And if you ever have to pull the system off, you're not like struggling to try to get that unclipped. So you want to get all 4 corners secured, and then you want to secure the center as well. The other thing is once you get this, and this is going to help you goes back to having a good install. A clean install is going to help you have less headaches of having to patch or paint. I would always take my level, and once you get your measurement, you have the level here. You know that where that level is now is the bottom of this unit. There's nothing worse than putting a unit in and you have half of a hole or a quarter of a hole down here, and then the customer's like, is it going to stay like that? Or, bugs are going to get in, or all kinds of stuff that they can tell you. If you take this and then you take a marker and you mark the top of that, you'll know where your cover is going to rest. So that way, when you set this unit, make sure you don't drill your hole below that. And you'll be able to set it on there. Once you set this unit on there, you won't have to do any kind of cleanup. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, there's another thing here. Wi-Fi. All these systems, they come Wi-Fi ready. The only thing you need is this little Wi-Fi USB adapter. It looks like a USB, right? But it's just a little Wi-Fi module. And you're gonna open this cover, and here's where you're gonna plug it in. And you basically just take it and just slip it in, and that's it. And then you're done. You don't have to wire anything. It's just really, really simple. The QR code on here is going to give you the link to download the app to control it. And I know Cooper Hunter, they're actually working on a new app for you guys. It's going to be It's going to be pretty cool. I've already seen some of it at in the process of being built. It's going to have a lot of cool features, but for right now, this will take you to the app for the to be able to control the system. And whenever you close these, you want to, there's little tabs here. A lot of times people try to shove them down. They do feel these systems, anytime you're working on these systems, the plastic's pretty strong, but it always feels like you're going to break something. So there are little tabs here. Just give a little push to get it past that. And the same on this side, there's a little tab. I want to see if you can get in there. This little tab here, you just want to give a little push in when you go to close it. That's just going to make your life a lot easier, because there's nothing worse than doing a brand new install and then having to order a new cover. Okay, back over here. You see how it says set temperature and has all my readouts, but that light's not on. So you want to make sure you have that light on. And then this system will take typically less than 5 minutes, and then it'll kick on. You'll hear some clicks and some thumps and whatever, and the fan is going to start. All your controls are going to be here. You can now, this unit comes with a wired controller. The panel is included, and the wired controller is included, and a wireless control. This wireless controller is also included with this system. This system only comes with a wireless controller, so just keep that in mind. But you don't have to purchase anything additional. And so there you go. Let's see here. Any questions? I kind of zipped through the last end of that. I apologize for that. Let me look through my notes. Float switch. If you're doing an install and you're pulling a permit, you're going to need a float switch. We do sell them. So this is going to be the float switch you want to use. And you're going to want to break the signal wire to be able to shut the unit down. So with this, you're going to break the signal wire. Let's see your unboxing. Anybody have any questions?
I think Edwin's helping us type answers.
Good.
So
Good,
that we
good.
can
That helps.
get you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Edwin.
otherwise, I'll be here all day.
I
got
know.
you.
I think Nicole's typing an answer to somebody right now, or but she's gonna pull up on the screen. Let's quick do our prize quiz questions. And if you still have more questions, everybody, please don't hesitate to keep asking them in the Q&A. We'll keep monitoring that while we do the quiz part.
Okay, so let me go. Quiz question number 1. What's the recommended PSI for high pressure leak testing? Question 2. Which port should the highest BTU cassette or high wall unit be piped to in a multi-zone system? Question number 3. What's the minimum refrigerant pipe length requirement? Okay, and question number 4. Where can you find submittal information for Cooper and Hunter mini split systems? Okay, where is the signal wire at?
The signal wire is mixed in with the communication. So when you get this kit, your signal wire on this system is the number 3 wire. Sometimes it'll be labeled S, but you have your wires. This is all in one. You got your line voltage, you got your signal, and you got your ground. So the signal wire is actually run with the power wire. You don't have to worry about any interference. So I don't know if they can they see me on the
Yeah, Nicole,
camera?
can you switch the view so they can see Tim? There we go.
There we go. So yeah, so like I was saying, so you have all your wires are here. I recommend when you're doing these wires, I'm gonna put it against my shirt so that way you can see it. Your communications wire is going to be any one. You pick a color, any color you want. I usually tell people, or I used to tell my guys, so the terminals labeled 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes you'll, even if it's not Cooper Hunter, it's another system, it's 1, 2, and S. You may see 1, N, and 2, and S, or whatever it is. with these Cooper Hunter systems, the signal wire is actually with the control wire. It doesn't matter which color. It doesn't have to be shielded. I usually recommend go alphabetically. One, put black on one, put red on two, put white on three. Just alphabetical, and that way, or take a picture, send it to your partner that's doing the outside, so he makes sure he doesn't get these crossed. Because if you cross these, you're going to run into issues. Also, another thing I don't think I mentioned is you don't want to extend this. It needs to be one continuous wire that goes from the inside, from the head unit to the condenser. You don't want any wire nuts. You don't want any splices. It needs to be one continuous wire. Don't use thermostat wire. I have seen people use thermostat wire. More recently, went back on a job where whoever installed the system, they ran thermostat wire as their control wire and their line voltage wire. It worked for years. I think the system was already in there for like 5 or 6 years. They called, they said, one unit's not working, getting communication error. At the unit, looked fine. The condenser was on the roof, that looked fine. We ended up finding a section of the thermostat wire that was charred and burnt. So always use, this is a, I believe this is a 16.4. This is 16.4. So that's why I said, buy the kit, the installation kit, it just makes your life a lot easier.
Okay, the next question is, what about a disconnect at the indoor unit?
Yeah, you could do it, but you want to break the line voltage. Only time I would suggest doing that is if it's code. And I don't know that I've installed quite a few of these and pulled a permit. I haven't seen where you need to do that. I would recommend against it, but if push comes to shove, you had to do it. I would verify that with Cooper Hunter, but I know some people have put switches, but you want to make sure you break the line voltage. You do not want to break that signal wire.
Okay. The next question is, what condensate pump do you prefer? I don't know if you have a preference.
I really don't have a preference. Okay, so with mini split systems, I prefer not to use them at all. I'm really not a fan of adding a condensation pump to high walls because they're hard to get to. And if you can avoid using a condensation pump, avoid it. If you can't, they both work great. I've had to use both of them because you go to certain supply houses and they don't always have the one you want in stock. So I've had to use both of them, and they both work fine. One thing I will tell you is you may want to wrap the pump with insulation or secure it, because I have got complaints where people say, "Oh, hey, listen, I hear this buzzing sound and it keeps me up at night. I can't stand it." So insulate it. Try to make sure it's secure as possible. Otherwise, you're just going to get somebody complaining about a noise.
Okay, is the signal wire low voltage?
Yes, it's DC voltage.
Okay, looks like Edwin's answering one of the questions.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and I think that's all I see
So
for now.
Tim, I'm going to pipe in here. So Rob is asking, one of our HVAC consultants, or has actually commented that in South Florida, inspectors have required that on the disconnect on occasion. So I don't know if Edwin wants to pipe in on that one. Edwin, you can unmute yourself and talk about disconnect and how you would do that.
Sure, no, not a problem at all. Good morning, everyone. I'm Edwin. I'm the sales rep for Cooper & Hunter. I'm actually here with Constantine. He's actually our engineer and head of tech support. So he's been chiming into the presentation. By the way, Tim, amazing job. Thank you. And Kostya.
Hello, everyone. Basically, yes, a lot of people asking how to disconnect on the indoor unit to the indoor unit. You can do it, but we highly don't recommend to cut the signal wire. Basically, you can cut number 1 and 2. It's our power supply, 2 lanes, and signal wire just run to the regular box. Do not cut it.
Did you guys understand that?
Yeah, does that answer your question, Rob?
Break the line voltage.
Okay,
Okay, I think that was it.
thank you. Oh, wait, there's another question, Nicole.
How many pounds of torque do you have to apply to flare connections?
Okay, so that's gonna be different depending on the copper. With 1/4 inch copper, you're about 20 Newton meters. I would use the, hold on, let me grab it. So with the torque wrench, if you never use a torque wrench, you have different types of measurements. So you have Newton meters. See if we can get close to there where you can see Newton meters. So with this, I was at 20 for the 1/4 inch, 18 to 20 for the 1/4 inch. And for the 3/8, I was about 25. It's pretty simple. If you look here, you have all your different notches, and it has numbers that let you know how much it is. And you just basically turn this, and you set it to wherever you want. It's going to be in increments of 5. So in between the 5, you have your 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'll set it, you'll lock it, and you'll do it. All your torque specifications are going to be in this installation manual. That's what I said. The installation manual is going to be important. It's not just something, like I think Todd had mentioned, it's not just for an E-pad, right? Or it's not just to swap flies. It does have some valuable information in there. That information, everything that I brought to you today, plus is going to be in an installation manual. So all those torque specifications, depending on the copper, it'll be in the installation manual for you. And if you guys have questions that come, if you have questions that come up later, join us, sign up for part 2 of this, and I'll be disassembling it, and hopefully I won't, go as long or talk as much, but I'll be able to break these down. You guys save those questions for us, or you guys can reach out to me on my cell phone. You can give me a call, you can text. You can also reach the technical support team at Cooper Hunter as well.